Today, we are ranking all 28 villains in Marvel Champions the card game. I am going from my least favorite at number 28 all the way to my most favorite villain in this game. Now, this is going to be just kind of like my hero series. I'll link in the corner if you want to see that. But basically, this is just my opinion, right? Villains I enjoy playing against, villains I don't enjoy playing against. Some of it's going to be by how difficult or not difficult they are, or by design choice or something like that. So let's dive right into the list with number 28. It's probably easily the worst one out there, and will always be the worst one out there, maybe. And that's Ronan. You see, Ronan always felt like the biggest miss to me, because there was so much opportunity there for Ronan, where I've said this a million times, but I'll keep saying it. He really should have started his difficulty at 11, which is what he does, and then gotten a little bit easier like as you go on throughout it. But the problem is he actually gets harder, right? His starting form isn't the hardest form, and it kind of stinks. When he starts off with his universal weapon and then all of his cards basically have surge, like it feels like all of them, it's not great, right? It's nothing that you can really prepare against because it's really hard to cancel all those surges if you can even cancel them. Ronan's just a really, really rough time, and always go down as kind of like this really hard villain overall, but it just always felt unfair hard. So anyway, that's number 28, Ronan. Number 27 is a villain I used to like at least a bit, and I can't. The design choice I think is still off with him, and that's Loki. You see, Loki, I like the idea of with the Lokis that switch in and out. I think that's pretty cool. I think the way that a lot of his cards build him up is pretty cool. I think the biggest problem is the Infinity Gauntlet deck with him. That Gauntlet deck works with Thanos. It makes a lot of sense with Thanos. It feels like they spent a lot of time designing that deck, and as they were making the box and used down Thanos, they go, oh shoot, we should probably put this on someone else because we spent so many hours on it. Let's throw it on Loki. And it feels off, right? I think I would have liked it more if standard Loki didn't have the gauntlet and expert Loki did. I think that makes more sense. Instead of just this idea that, if you face more Lokis, it gets harder as you go, which there is some truth. It does get a bit harder. But really, I mean, he's hard right out of the gate, like way more than any standard villain. Not any, besides Ronan, but most standard villains because of that gauntlet, right? It's so much. It's a little too much. I think that to me is the worst part and kind of ruins him. Infinity Gauntlet makes sense again for Thanos because I feel like they were designed together, and then it just feels like Loki was thrown the gauntlet for whatever reason. So I don't know. I like the idea of switching Lokis. I think it's a cool design choice, but I don't know. I don't think it was executed well with that gauntlet. So maybe in the future I just don't play with it. I don't know. But anyway, that's number 27's Loki. Number 26 is a villain is down there for being just too easy, and that's Absorbing Man. Even on expert, Absorbing Man isn't that bad. He's a little bit tougher. He's like facing a hard standard villain. His problem is threshold. His threat threshold is just way too high for what it is. He doesn't do a lot of attack or thwarting, right? Like the whole environment idea isn't bad, but it's not great. He's just a really easy villain, and I don't play him a lot. I feel like I can't even test decks against him because he's too easy, right? And if I have a good deck against him, it's really actually not that good of a deck. So anyway, that's Absorbing Man. Let's move on to number 25, which was our first scenario pack. And that's Wrecking Crew. I like the idea of Wrecking Crew. I think later on in the game they implement Wrecking Crew better, which we'll get into in a second. But once you kind of figure out the pattern of Wrecking Crew, you're kind of done, right? You kind of solved it. Or it's not the first scenario pack, I shouldn't say that, but one of the first scenario packs, sorry. The whole system of there's 4 of them out there and they activate differently. I think that's pretty cool. I think it works well. I don't know. Wrecking Crew is pretty easy. It's not super difficult and expert. It's not crazy difficult either. But the idea is cool. It's a villain I just don't play that much anymore because of that. All right, so number 24 is one that I hated a lot out of the gate, and it's a little bit better because of how the heroes have been designed from here on out. And that's Collector 1, right? So Collector 1 is the one with the collection where you put your cards in the collection and you put his cards in the collection, which never made thematic sense, but whatever. But you put your cards in the collection. Nowadays, we have enough heroes out there like a War Machine, right? Or even like Ironheart, where you don't always have to use your hero to attack, thwart, or defend, and you can use different things on the table instead and save your hero to exhaust each round to thin out the collection. I think as heroes have gotten more interesting in that sense. Collector one has gotten a bit easier, or maybe not easier, but a bit more manageable is what I should say. So I don't dislike Collector one as much as I used to, but I don't think he'll ever go higher. Like the only reason he goes up from here on out is just because there's really poorly, done villains after this. I mean, that's it. So anyway, that's number 24 is Collector 1. Number 23 is Collector 2, right? I still cannot stand that they put two collectors in the same box. I think that's such a weird design choice, but whatever. Collector 2 is always a little more interesting, but again, if you just have a really justice heavy hero that can thwart a lot, you're good. I mean, you can win other ways too, but you just thwart a lot and you're good. Put out a couple blockers. That's it. It's just it's a much easier scenario, but I do appreciate them trying something different, right? That it is really a scenario that's all about thwarting, right? Attacking doesn't matter as much. You can and probably should do it a bit, but it doesn't matter as much, right? With Collector 2. So yeah, kudos for them at least trying something out of the box and whatnot. It's better than Collector 1, which is always a good sign, and it's better than Ronan. So I guess that's something. So anyway. That's 23. Let us move on to 22, and this is the very first villain in the game, and that's Rhino. Now, what I like about Rhino is they didn't make him a pushover, right? They didn't make him like this introductory villain to like, this is how you learn the game and whatever, and like waste a spot. Rhinos can be tough. On pure solo, he's really tough because his main scheme, right? The 1A or 1B is the only one there, right? It doesn't turn over, and the threshold's only what, 7? Like that's insane for pure solo. On multiple player, it's better. It works better. But yeah, he's a weird one to play solo. He's not super enjoyable for me. Because you can never flip down. And so many of the heroes nowadays are about flipping down. Like even staying hero side up, there's a good chance that he can still scheme out, right? Which is kind of nuts, even if it's at 0. So his threshold is just a bit low. I wish they would have fixed that. Hopefully, maybe they will in the future. But anyway, I mean, he's okay. So that's 22, Rhino. 21 is someone that's very, very hard. Loki, Ronan, difficulty of hard. But I still really like the design of it. And I feel like I lose because I'm doing something wrong, not because the game is messing me up. And that is Venom Goblin at 21. So Venom, again, with the multiple main schemes or main scenarios out there, I think that's pretty cool. I think it's cool how it works. His collider is kind of insane, right? I get it, but again, Venom Goblin is really hard, but I feel like it's a doable hard, which I'll take every time, right? I'll take doable hard every single time. I really enjoy Venom Goblin, even though I get wrecked most of the time. I don't think I've still beaten him on expert, but still, I think it's a better experience than most of the other things because, again, I feel like I have a chance, and maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. But I do somewhat enjoy Venom. He might drop, or Venom Goblin. He might drop down eventually. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see. But as of now, he's fine, right? He's a fine villain. I don't have that much against him right now. All right. Number 20 is Nebula. We're just blowing through most of the Guardians box. The thing with Nebula is I think it's really, really cool. And I think the way you defeat her is by playing a rush deck. Because once she starts building out, it's that cascading of bad. It gets really bad. And sometimes she just gets a decent draw. And it's just bad right out of the gate. Nebula is very swingy, right? I've played games where it's the easiest game I've ever played, and I played where she's harder than Ronan, right? It's just she's all over the place with the way she works, and I think that's okay, right? I think that's okay. I think I'm not really against it, because there's enough times it balances out where it's like a good, fun game and whatever. But once you figure out like the rush strategy is the way to go, she gets a bit easier, and as long as you don't just get a really bad draw off the bat. You'll be all right. But I still like her. Like I still think Nebula's fine. I think she's fun. But yeah, we'll see what she does in the future. I need to play more of her too. So, all right, number 19 is Tower Defense. I think the design of this is really cool. I think what's interesting is for me, pretty much all the times I played, the actual tower itself, like catching on fire and flipping and all that stuff. I don't know if I've ever really lost that way, or if I have, it's because I'm not paying attention and like not going as fast as I should. But I wish that amount was lower. I felt like they went a little too conservative with it on tower defense, and that kind of stinks. Because I like the idea of the two villains out there and the two schemes. Like I think that's cool. I think it's a fun balancing act. They're not overly hard, right? On the expert, they're a really good challenge. But with the tower itself, I wish there was a little bit more in play, right? I wish that mattered a bit more. Unfortunately, it doesn't. That's the only real weak part of that that scenario, but I do like that scenario a fair amount. But I don't know. I wish the tower was more than it was, I guess. So that's number 19, tower defense. Number 18 is Crossbones, who I used to really hate, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because he uses so many modular sets. I don't know. But I'm starting to like Crossbones more. I think he's a really good challenge. I like his mechanics. I think for a first boss, he's up there as one of the better ones. Top two, probably. First box and like a scenario box, right? I think he's up there. I think he's pretty fun. I enjoy him. Um, yeah, he can kind of just get going and do massive attacks, and you have to be ready for it, which I think is always kind of interesting, right? Again, I think he's well balanced and interesting. When I would test decks, he's getting up there as one of my more playable testing villains. I think he's moving up. He's moving up for me. So I like Crossbones a lot. All right, number 17 is a favorite for a lot of people, and I just don't like this villain that much anymore, and that's Kang. I think the problem is he's too long, right? It just takes way too long to play Kang. I don't know. I can't do it anymore. It feels like most solo games for me take 30 minutes to an hour, right? Maybe 45 minutes. Sometimes faster, right? Kang, it feels like it takes well over an hour to play. It's so long. And not that it's not a bad scenario. I think it's interesting and how it jumps and time and all that fun stuff. And it's really thematic and it's cool. It just feels so long. And I don't know. When I play Marvel Champions, I want quicker paced games, and this one just feels a bit too long. I don't know. That's just my weird opinion. I know a lot of people, Kang is like a top 5 and top 10, and I get it. He's super unique. I just don't play against him that much, so whatever. So that's number 17 is Kang. He'll probably stay around there. I don't know. Number 16 is the Hood. Another great scenario pack. I really enjoy the Hood. I think the way he works is pretty cool with changing his difficulty by which modular sets go in there. I think that's neat. I think that's a cool mechanic to work. Plus, as more and more difficult modular sets come out, there's more you can do with him, right? He can either get easier or more difficult. I think that's pretty cool. I like the Hood. I just don't play him as much. I don't know why. I don't know. I want to. I would like to get him to the table more, but as of right now, he's just a middle of the pack, villain at number 16. So. Next up is number 15 is Drang. So I think this is the last one from the Guardians box, right? And Drang, I don't mind. I just don't know how much I love getting the extra resource, right? It feels like I'm getting a handicap on my deck, right? When I get the extra resource from the Milano. I don't love that. I don't mind Drang. I don't mind his like whole counter system that he has to like kind of keep the pace of the game. I think he's fine. I know a lot of people are using the test decks. I don't because of that extra resource on it, but I don't mind him as a villain. And like I think he's fine, especially for a first box villain. I think he's fine. I think he's one of the brighter spots of Guardians, that's for sure. But overall, I think he's just a fine hero. He's mid to me. Probably doesn't move up at all, but yeah, he's fine. All right, number 14 is from the newer boxes, and that is Sandman. I like Sandman. I like the idea of Sandman. I like that it's all indirect damage. I think that makes it more unique and interesting to play against him overall. I think I've just kind of like figured them out, right? And that makes sense for a first villain in the box. Like that makes sense. So I'm not like upset about that. But I think I just like more or less kind of figured out how I should, disperse damage on allies and how I can, block without blocking, right? Like all these different things. I don't know. I like the idea of Sandman. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty neat. I'm happy they did it, and I think he'll always stay pretty high up there because I do enjoy playing him. But yeah, the mechanic is cool, but it's not like over the top cool. So I do appreciate that. It is pretty good. All right, number 13 is an oldie but a goodie, and that is Claw. Now, Claw is one of the ones I test most of my decks against, especially Expert Claw. Expert Claw is phenomenal. I think it's really well done, especially for a core box villain. I really like Claw. Even on standard, I think Claw is pretty good and can be a challenge. A lot of the newer heroes can beat up on Claw, though, I think pretty well. His health might be a little bit low for standard. But yeah, he's good. He's fun. It's amazing to see that he still holds up after all this time, which is really kind of cool. But yeah, I like him. I think he slipped a little bit, but I think I'll get him back to the table more. I actually think he'll bounce around, maybe move up a little bit. All right, number 12 is another new box villain, and that is Venom, who I like the idea of Venom. I like the whole bell thing. The problem is once you kind of figure it out, you figure it out. Where just you put so many chime counters on, right? You should be putting a ton of chime counters because it doesn't force you to flip it over. So just stack those chime counters until you're ready to flip them, um, and then flip them, right? And then flip it, and then you just kind of take no damage for a while, right? You do excessive amounts of damage, and try to keep it there. It's really just build up chime counters, flip it, go to town, and hope you can kind of defeat them there. Expert Venom's pretty rough and pretty cool, so I do like that. Um, but yeah, like the mechanic is fine. I guess it's not amazing. I think Claw and Venom could flip flop back and forth. To me, they're both not the same, but like difficulty wise, they're around the same, I guess. So yeah, I like the mechanic, but I'm not over the top about it. So that's number 12, Venom. Number 11 is one of the ones I've always loved, and I don't know why, and that's Taskmaster. Now, Task isn't even that hard. Expert is a bit harder, but he has enough cards out there with the photographic reflexes or whatever it is, and different things like that, where he can really kind of mess up your flow of your game. The fact that you get some really strong allies is huge. I mean, just that's what makes him kind of easy. But him as a whole, I like Taskmaster. I like the way he works. I think he's still cool. I think he's still fun to play. I think Expert Taskmaster is one of the fairest villains to play against. Like, he's not hard, but he's not easy, right? To me, he's like a perfect middle of the road expert, which is probably not what you want in expert, right? Expert, you actually want to be like more difficult, but I feel like if you ever want to feel good about yourself, go against Expert Taskmaster. Again, not that he's easy, but he's easier than a lot of the expert ones. I think at least, mainly because of the allies you get. As long as you focus in on them, I think you're good. But yeah, I like Taskmaster. I think I'll always like Taskmaster. He'll always kind of float around there. So. All right, we're in the top 10. Number 10 is going to be Ebony Maw. Now, I really like the whole spell counter token thing. Like, I think it's a really cool mechanic. I think that if you're not balancing things out well, that can really kind of, bite you, which I think is cool. I like that they're not all like 4, right? And it's always like evenly. Like sometimes it's 4, sometimes 3, sometimes 2, right? The different counters for spells. So the next card you flip, it could be something worse that happens, right? Or it could be now you have 3 things to deal with at the same time. Like, I think that's a pretty cool mechanic. I think he's a lot of fun. I think he's pretty tough. But yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's fun. Really, everyone in this top 10 I'm going to like a lot. And really kind of play a good amount of. But yeah, Ebony Maw is just good. He can be a little bit on the easier side in standards, so that's why maybe he's a bit lower, but I don't know. I still really enjoy him. So number 9 is Risky Business. This is a part of the Green Goblin pack. I know a lot of people think Risky's super easy, and it can be if you're good at timing your flips. But then sometimes you get stuck and you have to flip him back and forth over and over, and it kind of stinks. And on Expert, he can be really kind of tough, right, with the flips. So I like Risky Business for Green Goblin. Like, I really like him. I think that scenario pack is still one of the best. I really enjoy that one. So we'll get more into Green Goblin later, but Risky Business, I still think it's top 10. I still think it's enjoyable. The other one could be sometimes a little too hard, but fun. It can be a little too hard. So Risky Business always felt like the easier of the two, but still a good challenge. I really appreciate that. So, all right, number 8 is Zola, who I actually think is the hardest villain from the Red Skull box because of Retaliate, right? The Retaliate and that his minions can buff up so much. It's amazing that he still holds up as well as he does. I think he's really, really cool. I think he's fun. I do think when I plan to take on that box, he's the number 1 villain I think about because of the minions, because of Retaliate, right? Like, you really have to time things well, and I think it's a really cool system. I think he still holds up really well, and I really enjoy playing him. So number 8 is Zola. Number 7 is a villain that started off low and slowly been moving up, and that is Mysterio. I see the first few times I played Mysterio, I just played these weird rush decks and I was doing pretty well. And I happened to get really good draws where his illusion cards weren't going into my main deck. So his mechanic didn't really get to shine through. As I've played a lot more of him, it's balanced out where I've ended up with like 8 to 10 of his cards in my deck, right? And it's much more interesting. It's much more fun. I think I just had some really weird draws like the first like 2-3 times I played him where I would only end up like 1 or 2 cards in my deck, and if I was just careful, I wouldn't have to deal with it. But I like Mysterio a lot, right? I like that mechanic. I think it's cool. I think it's unique. and it helps thin out his deck, which makes acceleration tokens faster, right? The whole thing is kind of interesting and cool. So I like Mysterio. I think he's moving up. This is probably where he peaks, though, realistically. Maybe he goes a bit higher. I'm not 100% sure now on that. But, I think he's fun. And expert version's a decent challenge with him. So, all right, number 6 is Thanos, who Thanos is really hard. But to me, Thanos is the perfect example of balanced hard, right? Thanos is really, really tough on expert. He can be really, really tough on expert. But again, I feel like I lost because I played poorly and not because the game cheated me. That's huge, right? That's huge, especially when you compare it to a Ronan or a Loki, right? Where it feels like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, there's nothing I could have done, right? Thanos, not every time, but the vast majority of times I've lost to Thanos, it feels like it's because, I should have played it this way. I should have done that. That was my fault here. I didn't play. Like, I could see what I did wrong. And that's the most important thing to me. When I lose to an expert villain, I want to see what I did wrong, not because, the villain pulled out 6 surges in a row, like Ronan. Right? Like I don't want to play a villain that way. So that's things. So I really like Thanos. I really like this kind of like this game where you play where you don't want him to go on the 2A, right? And snap half your deck. I think that's cool. I think it's pretty obvious the gauntlet was designed for him and not Loki. And it balances really well with Thanos. Really well with Thanos on standard and expert. So I really appreciate Thanos. I appreciate the way they did it. I think they balanced him well. And they made Thanos really well. So he's my number 6. So top 5. Number 5 is Red Skull, who I always think he's going to keep slipping down. But I just really like the design of Red Skull. I like the whole idea of the side scheme deck that comes out, where that stuff can really kind of mess up your game, right? I think one of them helps you, but the rest of it can really mess up your game. And then eventually the sleeper comes out and that really messes things up. And Red Skull and Expert's really tough. And Zola, I think, is harder, right? I consider Zola harder, but just that Red Skull is just so unique and he works well to this day. Even with all the Justice cards that are coming out that make him pretty strong, like he's still tough, really because of the sleeper. So I don't know. I've always enjoyed Red Skull. I've always enjoyed that villain scenario. And I always think it's gonna keep going down, right? I always think Red Skull is gonna go down this list, and it just never seems to. I don't know why. But I enjoy it. I enjoy Red Skull a lot. So maybe he eventually goes down, but as of right now, he's still hanging around. So all right, number 4 is Sinister Six, which to me is just the better version of the Wrecking Crew, right? The better, more balanced, more interesting version of the Wrecking Crew, right? Where you're actually just trying to escape, but you're still trying to attack them. I think it's balanced well. I think in the past, when we talk about a lot of this stuff, we've said how, with like Collector 2, right? You just have to focus on thwarting a lot, and that's it. Or different villains, you just attack and just rush them, and you win. Sinister Six, I think, is a really good balance where, yes, you have to thwart a lot, but you can't leave the villains just out there, right? If you just leave them, there's certain cards that do team ups, and it either brings them out or it lets them do a team up ability, basically. So you can't leave them out there. You need an actual truly balanced deck. I think that's really cool. I think that's fun. And I think it's pretty thematic for what it is. So I really like Sinister Six. I know it's kind of frustrating for a lot of people and it's a harder scenario, and I get it. But I think it's because you really do need a balanced deck. You need a very well balanced deck. And I really appreciate that. I really like how that was designed and done. So I think that's really cool. All right, top 3 time. Number 3 from the core box. From the core box. And this villain still holds up. And it amazes me to this day that this villain still holds up. That's Ultron. I love Ultron. I think Ultron is still one of the best challenges. I think he was so well made. I'm always curious of how much time they put into Ultron because it feels like they balanced him really well. I love the drones. I love that he uses your cards. All that is really, really cool. I think it's really fun and really interesting. I think he'll always be top 5 at the very least. I think eventually someone else is to come in the top 3 because the top 3 has been kind of the same for a little while now. So I think somebody else will eventually, but Ultron's just so good. He's so good. It's hard to believe he'll ever leave top 10. That's for sure. But top 5, even, I don't know. But number 3 is Ultron. Number 2 is the other Green Goblin. It has Mugen Formula. This is the harder one, but I really enjoy it, right? I enjoy all the minions. I enjoy the mechanics of it. I think it's a really well-balanced boss fight, I guess is the best way to say it, right? Villain fight. Because again, it's really hard. Expert's really hard. But again, I feel like I lost because I played poorly, not because the game kind of cheated me out of a win. So So I really like Mutant Formula. Again, it's another one that's been around for a long time, and I don't play it as much as I used to. I played recently, probably a week or two ago, and it was fun. It was still fun. It was still enjoyable. I lost by a lot because I forgot what my strategy was. Because I used to be able to go through Mugen Formula somewhat well, but not so much anymore. But I still really like it. I really like Green Goblin. I like the whole mechanics. That whole pack is just so good with Risky Business and Mugen Formula. I mean, the scenario pack is so good. So. All right, so if you've been keeping track all along, and hopefully I didn't miss any villains, I don't think I did. But number one has been my favorite since she debuted, and I think will continue to be, and that is Hela. I love how Hela plays because it is so unique, right? It truly feels like you're taking a journey through Asgard, right? Fighting the different side schemes and minions that go with it until you take on Hela at the very end, right? I think it's so cool. I think it's fun. This is another scenario where you need a pretty balanced deck, maybe a little more attack heavy than thwart heavy. But I think it's really cool. I think it's balanced. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hela. I really, really, really am. I think eventually she'll drop down at first place, but not anytime soon. I think it's so unique, so fun, so interesting. I really enjoy the way they designed her and played her. So anyway, she's number one. And I don't think she's going anywhere. I really don't. I need every time I even finish a game with her, I feel like I need to play another game with her. So anyway, all right, that's my top 28. So if you do me a huge favor after watching this, scroll down a bit, hit the like button, make sure you hit subscribe. Really helps the channel. It really helps me out. And leave a comment. Let me know your ranking, either top 3, 5, 10, all of them, whatever. Or you can let me know your thoughts on what you thought about my ranking, what you agree with, disagree with, all that fun stuff. And yeah, I think this will be the last ranking video that's this big for a while. Because X-Men, once X-Men comes out, we're gonna focus on that side of things and probably not, mix and match the two that much. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this ranking video. I hope you enjoyed the previous one with all the heroes. And yeah, thanks for watching this video.